Okay. My name is Sarah Hotchkiss. I'm on the board at Basics here. I own Catalyst Wellness Coaching downtown. I am right right next to 808 Cheesecake. And soon to be the Sugar Exchange. I'll be next to that too, so I'm going to have my work cut out for me. I'm right upstairs in Studio 107 across from what will be next year, I believe, the Children's Museum. So that will be great. I have an independent functional nutrition practice where I work with people with primarily weight loss, autoimmune conditions, and GI issues, and everything in between. But those are kind of like the big things. And overall, I would say the number one reason that people come to me is fatigue. Just not sleeping well, not enough energy during the day, just feeling like blah, moody, just tired. I track the symptoms when people come into me, and that is 100% of the people over the past many years that I've been doing this. It's fatigue. And so that's one thing that people, have in common. So I usually make sure to either do a blog or speak here every year on something that has to do with energy or fatigue. Besides like drinking a lot of coffee or like people are just like, what's wrong with me? I drink all this caffeine or I try all these things or I sleep okay and I'm still tired. Like what's wrong? And there can be lots of things. One of the things, if you work with me individually, that I require is a certain set of lab work. So just know that kind of ahead of time too. And the reason that I do that, sometimes people push back on that, is that I don't want to miss any underlying something that you have going on. I cannot tell you the number of times that I've had people go for labs they haven't gone for years and their thyroid's off, vitamin D super low, B12 super low, lipids are off. Like something's almost always off. But we have to address that along with your lifestyle, eating patterns, stress, something like that. If we miss that, if you come to me and you haven't had labs and you have hypothyroid or you have Hashimoto's, I can put together a lot of things and you'll probably feel 50% better. But until we address that piece, you won't get to the 80 or 90, where I kind of want you to be. And so those labs can be run through your doctor. I can order labs through Full Script now. I have lots of relationships with independent labs too, that for a couple $100 you can get like a huge panel. You can get hormones included in that too, like lots of things. So just know that. So we're talking about sugar today and why you crave sugar after a meal in particularly. I've done sugar detox and sugar craving talks before. I usually do that around November, actually, early November, before Thanksgiving and the holidays, before everybody kind of like checks out. But sort of before the holidays, I feel like that's like if I can get people before the holiday season, around like right around Halloween or that first week in November, then that's when people are listening. And so, but we're going to take it a little bit differently today and just talk about specifically why do you crave sugar in the first place, and why specifically are you craving it, or do you find yourself wanting something sweet after you just ate because it doesn't make any sense. I publish a blog every month on my website, and so there's a little bit more information on sugar cravings on there, as well as I talk a little bit about just blood sugar balance and a couple like supplements we use for things instead of Ozempic and some of the other meds, like some of the other things that I use instead with really great success. Berberine is one of them. But also remember that your sugar cravings are not going to go away if you just quick get that $30 supplement and pop a pill every day. So I'm not a fan of kind of looking for meds just to mask symptoms, but I'm also not a fan of giving you a whole bunch of supplements just to mask those symptoms either. It's really got to be like a whole kind of holistic approach. Supplements are fabulous and they usually don't come with the side effects that like a medication would, but they're not everything, and you cannot supplement away a bad diet. You can't. So it can maybe help a little bit, but it's just, it's not the same. So there's lots of triggers, I think, for like why you might, crave sugar after a meal. So before we dump in, everybody take that chocolate. I'll make you stare at it for a half hour before you eat it. No, it's probably melting now. Okay, I don't know, can you smell it? Does it smell like anything? Can you smell the chocolate or not really? You can. Okay, I had Amber grab a particular kind and I will tell you why. Okay, I want you to take a deep breath, pick up the chocolate, and you can either take a bite, you can put the whole thing in your mouth, and I want you to take your time savoring that piece of chocolate. You can let it dissolve in your mouth, you can chew it. You can take a couple bites. I just want you to take your time with it. And then notice what's happening in your body. You can close your eyes if you need to. Physically, how does that chocolate feel? How's your mood? What do you notice, like when you
nice and creamy.
eating that? Yeah, creamy. Yep. So what's your reaction to eating that piece of chocolate? How does it feel for you?
Like I want to eat the whole thing.
Okay, you want to eat the whole thing? Like, is that it? Like,
Eat the whole
yeah.
bar, yeah.
Yeah.
Where's the rest of the bar?
Where's the rest of the bar? Okay.
You go to that first sip of coffee in the morning,
Yes.
where your whole body's like,
Yeah. I'm like that too with coffee too. One of the things I've talked about in the past is that, so I just recently posted this on Facebook too about how I limit my cold brew. Like how I do extra ice and how, because I try to moderate my caffeine, but I would love a good cold brew, especially in the summer, even through the winter, but how I make it look like more. But I make myself drink 16 ounces of water before I have coffee in the morning, but it really helps the water down quicker because I can almost taste that in my mouth before I have that first like sip of. Okay, what else for other people? How does it taste? If you don't like chocolate, this is a really bad exercise, but how about you? How does it?
The salt in there was a good.
Yep, you got a sea salt one. Yep, makes it a little more hyper palatable, which is good.
Oh, yeah, there's just a little bit of salt.
Yeah,
Never thought of that.
yeah,
You should always enjoy that nice dark chocolate.
right. And I had her get closer to a milk, and I'm going to tell you why too. Like, there's a specific reason for that too.
it's milk chocolate toffee crunch.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's immediate, like a positive uptick.
Right.
And
I was waiting for somebody to say that.
I knew what it was, but then even that tastes as if my brain.
Low dopamine. Yeah.
Go.
That's why I had you smell it first and like wait just a little bit and like take some time. I think most of the time we're like shoving it in. So, all the things that you guys said will be connected with some of the reasons, and I'll tell you what to do about it too. I'm not just going to give you reasons why you crave chocolate and then be like, bye. Good luck with that. Eat less, because there are kind of like connections there. It definitely is like a dopamine hit though. Even the anticipation of it. I have a dopamine hit in the anticipation of my first sip of coffee in the morning. Like I know I do. And so I think even we went out to eat last night at Janisa downtown. Oh my gosh, it was so good. And we only go out to eat about once a month. And I was already anticipating the dessert menu because I only get dessert once a month. And I had already looked at the dessert menu, and my husband was like, oh, because I always look at the menu ahead of time because I have to do gluten-free and some other stuff. And he was like, oh, what did you see on the menu you liked? I'm like, I didn't even look at the regular menu. I know I want the chocolate cake at the end, And so they had espresso gelato and like a chocolate cake, and it was good. And so we split it. So, but there's lots of reason why that chocolate feels good for you. Also, you said like you want where's the rest of it? Yeah. Do you feel like you have issues with sugar, like craving sugar, or not too bad?
Not too bad, but there's like my moments where I just
Yeah, because it's interesting that you said that to me, like that you weren't somehow emotionally satiated by that. Not that that's a lot, but like, yeah, the idea is that like you'd have it kind of be down. So I had Amber grab milk chocolate, and the salt was a nice addition too.
It was dark chocolate.
I think it's 50, so it's a little more healthy. Oh yeah, right. I had her grab a lower. So like 55 isn't quite milk, but I had her grab a really sweet one because I wanted you to feel kind of what that sweetness was like in particular, because the sweetness or the amount of sugar and the chocolate in particular, can be particularly a little bit more addicting than like a dark chocolate. When I do sugar detox with people, or when I talk through that, or if I don't have people do this very often, but if we say nothing sweet for a month, that includes fruit, like just for a month to like reset your palate a little bit, I tell them they can have chocolate, and they're like, whoa, that'll be great. And I said, no, it has to be baking chocolate. Have you ever had a bite of baking chocolate? You can have as much of that as you want. And they're like, what? It's bitter, right? But that helps kind of reset your taste buds. So a lot of them end up dipping like bitter chocolate in peanut butter, and not the peanut butter with sugar and salt in it either. Like literally just peanuts and, you know, dark chocolate. So I at the after dinner have a piece of chocolate every night actually, but mine's 90, like pretty dark, because then it increases my satiation, and I don't necessarily wanna, because there's not much, there's like 1 or 2 grams of sugar in there. It doesn't make me want to just like eat the rest of the bar, and it's a good way to signal for my body to kind of be done. So I'm not sitting here telling you not to eat chocolate or not to eat something sweet after a meal, but I want to walk through like why you feel like you need it and why maybe you eat too much of it then too, because having a piece of chocolate like this is not that big of a deal every day, right? But it's, you know, Pop-Tarts and granola and maybe whatever else you had, sugary drinks and whatever else you had kind of the rest of that day. But I had Amber grab one that wasn't very dark, because then you'd have more sugar. So there's 12 grams of sugar in 1 serving of this, which isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's much more sweet than like a dark chocolate for sure, more than a baking chocolate. The added salt in there makes it more hyper palatable too, because you're getting the salt, the sugar, and the crunch kind of like all at once. Do you guys know what one of the most hyper palatable foods that people report to me? So one that's like, they like can't not have it besides chocolate. They have to have it, and they addicted. Potato chips is a good guess. I'll tell you what it is. Any other guesses?
Ice cream?
Mm-mm.
People's coffee?
Yes.
For me, it's pasta.
Pasta?
And
So it's peanut butter. Because peanut butter has the perfect and crunchy or creamy mixture of fat, which people crave, salt, which people crave, and there's sugar added to peanut butter. So I'm talking about like the Jifs or the Skippy, like not something you would maybe get here, but like it has the perfect connection of like, especially when I work with women in their 30s and 40s going through hormonal changes, they're like, I don't know, I ate a half a jar of peanut butter, I don't know what happened. Or like when you want something, I want a peanut butter sandwich, peanut butter, whatever. And so it has that perfect mixture of fat, salt, and sugar, and those are usually the top 3 things that people crave. I'm not saying people don't crave ice cream or potato chips, and now I can taste both of those things right now. So that sounds really good, maybe even mixed together. And so there's biological triggers why you crave something sweet after a meal. And so if you consume a meal high in refined carbohydrates, like maybe pasta or simple sugars, it causes a rapid spike in your blood sugar, okay? But then the body responds by releasing insulin to try to bring your blood sugar back to normal. Sometimes your body overshoots. A lot of times this happens. This is when you get this like up and down. That's why people are tired. So if it overshoots, then it actually results in a little hypoglycemia, where your body is like, oh, I need, you know, I was used to having this pasta, and then we stopped eating, and then what happened? You know, and it kind of like crashes. That's why you crave something sweet, because the body is looking to like auto-correct that back up to where you were when you were eating the pasta. And so the hypoglycemia drop, and I'm talking about like you're like passing out or anything like that, but it just like takes a dip that makes you want more. That drop triggers hunger, which you may or may not be actually hungry, but it triggers that craving of more. And nobody's like, oh, I need a carrot. You know, like you want something sweet, like after that, after you had that high carb dinner, which doesn't make any sense because you just had pasta or grilled cheese or whatever. Because it provides in your mind an energy boost, and in your body it provides an energy boost because you had all this sugar, these refined carbs that process super quick in your body. You stop eating, you took a dive, and your body is like, I don't like that, I want to get back up there. And so you crave like sugar or a donut or something like that. So to manage this, I'm going to give you some I'm going to give you lists at the end, but an example of this, to manage blood sugar levels and reduce your post-meal cravings, and I'm going to say this over and over again today, is to opt for a balanced meal that includes complex carbohydrates, which means, let's say you ate pasta. Let's say that's a good really example. Pasta with even marinara, no meat, but like maybe a pasta with marinara. That's a really, really high carb meal. Also sounds yummy. But instead of the pasta, then I might do a baked potato or a sweet potato, because you're getting the fiber and complex carbohydrates, and then as a whole food source. I'm not telling you to eat a low carb meal either, because that can also sometimes have the opposite effect too. And so a balanced meal of complex carbohydrates, meaning a carbohydrate that has some fiber in it. And so that's most vegetables, that's most root vegetables, that can even potentially be fruit, the fiber. And then a lean protein, which that spaghetti marinara is missing. So if you had ground beef in there, that would be helpful. If you had chicken, if you had fish, shrimp, tofu, something like that. And then just making sure that you have some healthy fats in there. So actually the marinara over pasta doesn't really have any healthy fats in there either. That could be the natural fat from the meat, which I'm a fan of. Or it could be maybe an olive oil that you drizzled over your, or maybe you had a salad with it. So maybe you even had like, what's the name of the pasta we have here? Oh, miracle noodles. Have you guys heard of those? That's like a 0 carb pasta. I don't know how they do it. It's like 1 calorie or something. You could eat the whole bowl. It's crazy. Go check it out. They look funny. So they're like noodles swimming in water, kind of. You drain them. You can throw them in the microwave. You drain them, rinse them, and you can throw them in the microwave or a dry pan, and it's going to look like they're going to stick, but they won't. They will not stick, but you're going to be like, she's wrong. These are going to stick. I got to put oil in the pan. They don't stick. You can microwave them for 60 seconds or throw them in a dry pan. You could throw your pasta sauce over there with maybe meat and a salad with olive oil and vinaigrette, and that would be like a good option. The other one I talked to, last time we talked about this, I sold you guys out of the mung bean pasta, but that's my other favorite. There was 8 on the shelves that everybody grabbed them when they left. It's, I can't remember the name of the brand. Do you, Amber?
Explore Cuisine.
Explore Cuisine. Okay, and they have a chickpea one too, but I particularly like the mung bean one. It's kind of dark green because it has 20 grams of protein per serving. And no, 24 grams of protein per serving, and I think only 20 carbs and some fiber. So it's just a nice sort of pasta alternative. So the blood sugar imbalance, number 1, biological, can be from eating too high of a carb of dinner. You crash and then you want more. So that's number 1. Another biological trigger is the dopamine release that you were talking about when you had the chocolate and you just kind of like, I kind of feel good. Like the anticipation that it was coming, and then I ate it and it matched my expectations and it was phenomenal. And so the addictive qualities of sugar, which is why I had Amber grab this one and not baking chocolate. I should have done that with you and not told anybody, and you guys would have been all excited, and then you would have bit, and then people would have been like all over the place in here, right? That would have been an interesting like combo though, is to do that one first and then give you more chocolate. Not everybody maybe would have taken the second chocolate. You would have been afraid, but sugar is very addictive because it causes that dopamine release. And so dopamine is a neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. In fact, that is one of the labs that I use. So I'm a licensed therapist as well, but when I work with people with anxiety and depression and mood stuff, I run a neurotransmitter test that'll tell me what exactly your brain and your body is doing, like all of those neurotransmitters. If your serotonin's low, if your dopamine's low, and then there's certain things that we can do about that from a vitamin and food perspective. But the dopamine release creates this like positive, yummy, happy sensation that reinforces the desire for sugar. Last night when we got dessert, I was not hungry. Like I was full from what we got because it was like more food than I was used to eating, whatever. But there was no way I wasn't going to not get it because I've been thinking about it from the month before when I got, dessert and looking forward to it. Like I said, I had spent, time looking at that dessert menu. But that's one way that I moderate my sugar intake is like once a month we go out for eat. I get kind of like whatever I want. I almost got like a pizza there actually last night, but I get whatever I want and then we split a dessert and then that's the end of it. And then I just get back to my regular scheduled program. And so indulging in sweet treats after a meal then results in this temporary surge of pleasure, which then leads to future cravings of wanting more. So you can see where this is going. It's not that one piece of chocolate you had. It's the fact that your brain is then like, ooh, do that again. I want more of that. Okay, so that's the second biological trigger. The third is literally you have created a habit out of it. And so biologically, your body is like, it would be weird for you to eat a meal and then not have something sweet after it because you literally have created a habit. You've just done it for so long and so many years that it would be weird to stop. You'd be sad.
Yeah, cookie or something.
Yeah,
candy or something.
right. Small, even if it's not a lot. There was a woman I was working with last week and she said, we were doing a food journal and she just said, I just have a little something sweet after a meal. And I was like, yeah, I know, But it wasn't just after dinner. It was actually like 3 times a day. It was like a little piece of pie after lunch and then a little cookie after dinner. But that really added up like in the course of the day. And then her breakfast was like bagels. And so then that was like a surge of, that too. And then she said, I have a bagel and then I'm hungry right away after. Oh, well, that's why, because it just kind of that went right through you. It's supposed to be like scrambled eggs or something like that. And so the routine that you create or that you have created for years and makes it harder to break the longer you've been doing it, that creates an association in your brain to say, wait, how come you're not having that after dinner? Or have you ever been to someone else? If you have sugar after a meal, have you ever been to someone else's house and they have a meal and then they don't have anything sweet after? You don't do sugar? Have you ever had that?
On occasion now.
I have. And yeah, if you're, I mean,
It's real disappointing.
it's real disappointing.
Well, Christmas card this year for you.
Yeah. Cutting you off. Anybody else? Have you ever been to if you are used to having sugar after a meal, a little bit even, have you ever been somewhere where they don't serve anything after? So what's it like? Do you go home and have something?
Can't wait to go home. Boy.
Yeah, gotta go. Yeah.
I think I got a headache here.
Yeah, right. So, yep. So number 3 biological reasons is you have done it to yourself, like you've created a habit. Number 4, stress. That's huge. So one of the other tests that I run in my practice is cortisol, saliva cortisol. I do a 4-point cortisol test. We do it in the morning before you go to bed and 2 times in between. If you have high stress and your cortisol is going to be up, that will make it really hard for you to lose weight, and it's going to make you want to crave more sugar. If you crave more sugar and if you eat more sugar, then guess what? You probably can't lose weight because you're doing all that. And so I'm not going to sit here and say eliminate stress from your life. We know that. But really, sometimes taking a good look at what is stressing you out, what can you control, what can you not control. And sometimes I think there's things that we think that we can't control and we can. And processing too, how to let things go that maybe are out of your control, like how to do that, or it's working with a therapist, or it's doing yoga or meditation. But that's huge. I've had a lot of people I've worked with over the years that say their job is super stressful for them. And they're like, well, I can't quit that. And then they go on to something else. Not that I'm trying to get people to quit their job. But honestly, sometimes if that's the biggest thing and that's 80% of it, and we've done all these other things, it's like they're still in the same spot they were before, but they're like, well, I make all this money, but I have to do this, but I have to. But you don't actually have to. Like, you can make a job change. I did it a handful of years ago. It's super hard. So, but you can, and that might be the hardest thing to do is probably the thing you actually need to do, which might be sugar, might be the job, might be something else. So that's number 4. Number 5 under biological is sleep. And if I would have you work on one thing, it's not sugar. It would actually be sleep. Because if you don't sleep well, everything else goes to heck the next day and you will crave sugar. Why? Because if you don't sleep, your cortisol goes up and that stresses you out, stresses your brain and your body out. I don't feel right if I don't sleep well. I'm just like off. I want more coffee. I want more sugar. I'm more likely to like not follow my plan the next day. So sleep is numero uno. If you are not sleeping well, come talk to me because I work with that a lot too. We did a perimenopause talk here a few months ago that was connected with sleep. So a lot of times it can be hormonal, or it's stress, or there's something in your environment, or you're having caffeine too late. There's lots of different things, but sleep is number 1. So if you don't sleep well, this is going to be connected with all this other stuff. So when you don't sleep well, it disrupts all your hormones and all the things that your body's supposed to be doing when it sleeps. It will totally mess up your digestion. That is probably the number 1 thing that I notice. I'm like, I'm bloated and not like digesting things well because my body didn't sleep through the night for whatever reason. So I have 3 cats, 2 kittens, and about 3 weeks ago when we went to bed, they were all sleeping all nice. And I'm like, you know what? They can just stay. It'll be fine. We'll just sleep with them. I have one that sleeps really good with me all night, and that's one that I leave in there, a little orange kitty that I have that he's not nocturnal. He sleeps all night with me and he doesn't bother me at all. The other 2 got to go. But I'm like, they look I think they'll be fine. They were awful. Climbing the curtains, like knocking over lamps. The other one's like on the face with me, like wake up, like hi, and then one's hissing and they're like tumbling all over the floor. Things are breaking. So I remember that morning waking up and I was just like pissed off from the beginning of the day. I'm like, where's my coffee? Didn't even drink my water first. You all have to go, you know? So then the next night when they were sleeping there, all pretend, I was like, you all have to go. Like at least 2 out of the 3 of you. So the one has proven himself very well behaved at night, so he gets to stay, but the other 2 gotta go. So pets can be huge for sleep. All right, so that's biological triggers. Psychological triggers. When you make sugar and sweets and all the extra yummy stuff off limits completely, you are going to want it more. So that's why I said I don't really, and if you click on that meal plan, there's a muffin in there. Like, I don't go all in on sugar. I do, one thing I will do with people if I feel like their cortisol is really high and they really have a lot of addiction pieces is I'll do a 30-day sugar detox from anything sweet. And when I say sugar, I mean not sugar-free things either. So like not pretend sugars, not stevia, not monk fruit, nothing that tastes sweet on your tongue, because you are getting a dopamine release from that. Not Diet Coke, nothing. You'll do that, and after 30 days, you know what'll taste sweet? Celery, which I know sounds really wild. But if you have had nothing sweet touch your tongue for 30 days and you go to eat a piece of celery, you're going to be like, wow, much less a donut or something else. And it might even be too much for you. It might feel like that's crazy. So that includes fruit too. And I'm not bashing fruit because I think fruit is great and lovely and you should have it every day. But I'm saying for the purpose of resetting your palate, sometimes 30 days without anything sweet is super hard. You'll go through withdrawal, but it's like, that's a good idea. But for most of us, this sort of 80-20 mixture of like mostly whole foods and some treats is a really good idea. But if you have to be able to give yourself permission to have it once in a while. This is a slippery slope though, because when I say once in a while, I don't mean 3 times a day like the woman I was just talking about, pie, cookie, bagel, like she had that, so that was like half her calories that day. It was all that. So I mean truly once in a while. So you got to define for yourself what that is. I do this with people with alcohol too, actually, like once in a while. What is that? Once in a while each night? Once in a while on Fridays, whatever it is. For me, what's worked is going out to eat and having a full dessert once a month. And I have a piece of chocolate after dinner every night. And that's really about it. I put a little honey in my coffee. But other than that, other than fruit, I really don't have much else then that's like sweet. Here and there, yeah, maybe. Holidays, you guys are talking about holidays. A little more for sure, absolutely I do, but not a ton. And if you don't eat much, if you really cut yourself off and don't have much anymore, I don't really crave it. I know that sounds crazy. But I don't, sometimes if it's presented to me, like I see it, then my brain starts thinking about it. But if I don't keep it in the house and I don't really just buy it or I don't present myself with it, then it's okay. We went to the Parade of Homes last night. I don't know if any of you guys have been this weekend. You can see some gorgeous homes around Janesville. It's $10. And one of the ones as we were leaving had a plate of like fresh baked cookies all over. And I asked the people that were working it, how in the world do you do this today? They're sitting there, the cookies are like within arm's reach. And she was like, I already had 3, So, but, so when I saw that, I noticed I could like taste those cookies like in my mouth. And I was like, keep walking. And then I thought, gosh, I hope my husband doesn't grab one because then I want a bite. But if he does grab one, he can eat the whole cookie and I'll take a bite and that'll be fine too. So I'm into like bites. When I take my kids to Cold Stone, we don't go very often, but a handful of times a year we go. I don't get ice cream. I take a bite of everybody's and then that's good. And sometimes I ask for a sample too. So then I get 4 bites of ice cream. Otherwise they serve you these monstrous ones. Did you have a question?
If you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. No, you can ask during.
Is there such a thing of psychologically, whatever you know to be good for you, you do the opposite? Like you
That's self-sabotage, yeah.
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 I mean,
and there's like, we could go into a whole like therapy session about that. But yeah, that is often, sometimes people do that. Often that is rooted in not feeling good enough. And so,
and probably about children of alcoholics.
Sure, absolutely. Anything with addiction. Yep, children of alcoholics. And so there's a connection of either not being good enough or there's like a reward center with like dopamine and addiction history for sure.
Is there something that can be done to trigger that opposite or no?
Yeah, I mean, you could do a sugar detox. I'd say like if someone had that, working with a therapist is a really good idea because there's emotional root in that then for sure. I'm going to go through emotional triggers in a second, but like there's emotional root in a piece of that. And so there's emotional roots in all addiction, even if we're talking things that are less of a big deal. Like, I'm not talking about heroin or alcohol, but even if we're talking about coffee and sugar, really, they still are. They're just, it's just different. Even exercise can be addictive for some people. I'm not one of those people, but some people are like, they do it a lot, like too much, and then they raise their cortisol too much, and they're just like, they can't not work out. And we might think that sounds good, but too much of that isn't necessarily great either. But yeah, psychologically, if you say, I can't ever have any of this, it's probably not going to work super well. But you can set yourself up for some sort of a plan or something in moderation. Sugar after dinner, beyond like a little piece of something, but like having a piece of pie or like having that is almost always emotionally rooted. And so that's almost always like some emotional eating. Unless you didn't eat enough, which I'll get into that too. But if you had a fully balanced meal and you'll still grab it, and do you even think about it when you grab it, or is it just like, again, out of that habit, you just did it? And so that's something to kind of look at or just ask yourself. If you have had an unsatisfying meal, you will probably be more likely to crave sugar. So I don't do keto with people. A couple people I am able to or qualified to, but I just don't because I feel like it's hard to sustain. Sometimes I see a lot of digestion problems with it because you're not getting enough fiber. But sometimes if people are like, I'm just going to have this steamed fish and this broccoli, no sauce, no salt, no oil, whatever, you're going to eat that, and you're definitely going to want cake or chips or ice cream after that because your body's like, what else are we having? So you have to be able to set up something that's like palatable for you too and sustainable. And so that's why I always tell people, they're like, I don't know if I want to do a meal plan with you. Like, I'm scared. And I said, okay, you're not eating steamed chicken and carrots all day. My meal plans have some baked goods in there. They're homemade, but like some baked goods in there. Lots of protein, lots of vegetables, lots of fruits. The smoothies are sweet. It's a good like balance of things. But if your meal is unsatisfactory, meaning that maybe you didn't have a little carb in there or something that's like tasted yummy to you, and if you didn't eat enough, if you had a dinner that was like 250 calories, you probably actually are hungry then after dinner, and then you'll be like, well, I finished that, so I'm going to go have a piece of cake. And so if you don't eat enough, if you don't get enough fiber, if you don't get enough protein, and if you don't have a satiating, balanced meal that you enjoy, you're probably more likely to reach for something too. So can you think of a healthy meal if we talk about protein, fiber, some vegetables? You'll hear me say protein and produce all the time. So I always tell people, fill your plate up 80%, 75% with protein and produce, and then the rest kind of doesn't matter too much, right? And so that could be, so I try to get in 2 vegetables in all of our dinners. So sometimes that might be a salad on the side, or like I made spaghetti the other night. So I did marinara sauce, and then I chopped up, my son hates zucchini, but I like chopped up and then pulverized zucchini in there, and then red peppers, tomatoes, and carrots, just real like small. And then we had a side salad, but that was a way, that's probably actually 3 servings of vegetables, a way that I got like 3 servings of vegetables in our one meal. But it was still satiating because he was eating a big pile of pasta, but then I had ground beef in there too. Can you think of a healthy meal that has the things we're talking about? Protein, produce, fiber, but something that you enjoy. So not the like steamed fish, no oil, no salt, and raw broccoli.
I would do the fish and broccoli, but I would probably add sweet potato.
Yes. Okay. So that's perfect. Is adding, because I love a sweet potato. I'll even put a couple teaspoons of maple syrup on my, and I would say on my sweet potato, making sure you're getting enough salt. Salt is, like sea salt on that fish or that, on that broccoli too. So there's that's a whole nother talk, very few people that need to limit their salt intake, really. I'm not talking about the salt you get in a burger at Burger King. I'm talking about some just nice Himalayan sea salt, pink, gray, whatever, just that you would throw on your, to make it, again, palatable. Because it's not realistic that you are going to eat steamed plain, bland fish or chicken breast. And some people are like, in fact, I can only handle so much chicken in a week because then I'm like, I'm sick of chicken. I need something else. And so I really need to mix up my proteins. I usually have fish once a week, chicken a few times a week, but we do pork and beef too. So just to mix it up, I crave tofu actually sometimes too. It's like crunchy. And so mixing up your flavors, mixing up your meals is good. Like I try to do like Mexican one night, but then we try to do Italian. We do Chinese or Thai a lot. Like mixing up the flavors a little bit so you don't get bored. That's why sometimes people like a meal plan with me too, because it just gives you new like recipe ideas. On my website, if you scroll to the bottom, it says shop. There's meal plans ready to go there for you. And so they're low cost and they get emailed to you. They're about 75 pages. You can print them out in color and bind them if you want. I should have brought a cup, but they're, you can just get like a bind thing, but they're 8.5 by 11 and it's 6 weeks of menus and there's tons of different ones like menus to choose from. So that's an option too. Okay. So if you don't have enough variety in your meal, if you don't have enough flavor, that's why I said the salt, or if you don't have enough nutrient balance, then you're going to crave sugar too. Yep.
And Himalayan salt, does that bring out more flavor?
I think it does. Yes. Yeah. Especially if you get more of a coarse ground. So, yeah.
You don't use as much though.
And it's not
You
his,
don't use as much.
you could use the same, it doesn't, I mean, it wouldn't matter to me. Yeah, you could use whatever. I think it's a little bit more, yeah.
It seems stronger.
So I think it feels more salty. Yeah. I like it every once in a while too when I get like a little crunch there. It's also just a much less processed variety of salt. So anything that's less processed, I'm a fan of. That's why I kind of like a raw honey or a maple syrup over a different like processed form of sugar too. So sugar's still sugar. So I'm not saying you should eat like a cup of maple syrup on pancakes. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying like if you're gonna, like when I make my coffee in the morning, I put honey or maple syrup in it, but I'd rather do that than something else or a junky creamer or whatever. So tips to reverse some of this stuff. And so if your issue you think is out of habit, then listen carefully. So if you think you're eating a pretty good balanced meal, you're not really hungry, you have no emotional issues, and it's out of habit, you have this cue that you have set up for yourself that tells your brain that it's time to have something sweet. It might be dinner. Oh, done with dinner because you've created this habit for yourself. It might be talk to a couple moms that say it's waiting to pick their kids up from school. They like bring a snack with them, like a sweet something, because like they're waiting, they have time. A lot of people I talk to, it's nighttime is their cue. They get their pajamas on and they sit on the couch and it's the first time all day, it's 9:30 that they're not racing around doing stuff and they're just sitting. And so they're like, oh, your body doesn't want to just sit there or it can't wind down. These are people with high cortisol too. So it's like, well, I need to do a little something. I might as well like put a little something in my mouth. Like, so that's when you have like, you end up with a bag of chips or, it could be something salty too, but sweet. So you got to erase that cue somehow or do something differently. Now you're going to eat dinner every night, so that's a tough one. But you have your cue, you have the routine of eating the chocolate, let's say, and then you have the reward that comes with putting it in your mouth, just like you did today. So you got to mess with that process. Let me give you an example. I worked with a woman a few years ago who had an addiction to Diet Coke. She'd had Diet Coke every morning. I've told this story a couple times because it applies so many times. She had a Diet Coke every morning for, I think she said about 35 years through the McDonald's drive-thru. And those of you that had Diet Coke from McDonald's know that there's something different about that. And they put some stuff in it and it tastes really yummy. And it's all icy. Ice is really good. And like you eat it in a straw and you can anticipate what that tastes like, right? Of course, you would get that with a blueberry muffin, because the Diet Coke makes you crave more sugar, so then you get a muffin with it. So that was like an awful habit to start her morning with for 35 years. She had fibromyalgia. She's coming to me to reverse her autoimmune disease and all the symptoms with it. And so I said, okay. I said, where we got to start? She's like, yep, I wouldn't have called you if I wasn't, ready to do this. So I had less of an issue, and it was a big thing of Diet Coke. I had less of an issue with the caffeine that she's getting, although that's another topic, but I had less of an issue with that. It was like, just the fact that it was this soda, and then she had the muffin with it. Every morning she was doing this. So you were talking about the anticipation of holding that chocolate in your hand and smelling it. She had the anticipation of just driving down Milton Avenue. There's the McDonald's. There's the queue. So you know what we had her do? Take a different way to work. Didn't make any sense. But in the end, it was probably like Well, in the end, it was probably 2 minutes out of her way, but it probably saved her 10 minutes in the drive-thru and about 400 calories. So, and maybe even more, because if she had the Diet Coke and the muffin, then she wanted more sugar the whole rest of the day. So the cue was, she developed this habit, but the cue was Milton Avenue and that McDonald's, like looking at. The minute she pulled into McDonald's, we had this whole talk. I had her sit down and explain to me in the chair what this was like. And she was like, I start to salivate really when my blinker goes on and I turn in there and then I think about it and then I touch the cup and then like I open the straw and then the ice and then that first sip is like, oh, and I open the muffin. And I mean, it was, and I had her talk through that. And I just stopped and I said nothing. She goes, wow, I have a problem, because when you talk through it out loud with somebody, so you have to remove the cue. And if you remove the cue, the rest of it actually is fairly easy, because then now she's messed up her whole morning and you're out of your routine. And so then you don't have then she didn't have the reward. I don't try to replace things all the time. So I don't just try to find a different pasta or a different drink or like whatever, because I really want you to like kind of think of an upheaval in your diet of just eating some more protein and produce and not just finding a better cracker, a better pasta, a better toast, or a better granola bar, because you're still eating a ton of, that's still, a lot of refined carbohydrates. So just really thinking of your meals of looking differently. But one of the things we talked about with her was that she was so fatigued from her fibromyalgia. And I said, well, we're just getting going. I want to really work on the fatigue. But until then, I'm not going to ask you to give up the muffin, the sugar, and the caffeine all at once, because, that might be awful. So we switched her over to a cold brew she made at home. And so there's a ton of chemicals in Diet Coke, you guys. So I would rather her be drinking a cold brew with a little honey and a splash of cream than that Diet Coke. And then she wasn't having the muffin either. And then we totally erased the cue and the habit. So she developed a new habit. And I said, do you like coffee? Do you like cold brew? Do you like iced coffee? Oh yeah, I do. Like I haven't had one in a while. And so that's what and then slowly we just kind of, I don't know if she ever gave up caffeine, and that was not my issue, but we limited kind of how much it was, but it worked out fine. So then a year later, guess what I did? She's a friend of mine. I said, when's the last time you had a Diet Coke? And she was like, man, I don't know, like, before I was working with you. And I said, I want you to do something for me. And she said, what? I said, I want you to go to McDonald's and have a Diet Coke. She goes, no, I can't do that. Like, she was like afraid, like I'm gonna fall back into my same, I'm gonna have a muffin and then I'm gonna, whatever. I said, it's been a year, you've lost all this weight, 80% of your symptoms are gone from fibromyalgia. I want you to try it. It's been a year. She goes, okay. So she didn't. And finally she texted me. She was like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with you? I said, what? What are you talking about? Of course I knew. So she drove in there. She didn't have the same feelings as much, but she was kind of scared, a little bit anxious. She didn't get the muffin. She got a Diet Coke. Pulls out McDonald's, takes a drink, rolls her window down, spits it out. Tasted awful to her because we had reset her whole palate. It didn't taste good anymore. This happened with my husband with Mountain Dew. He quit Mountain Dew over the course of maybe a week. Didn't have it for years. We were at, I don't know, some social gathering or whatever, and he was tired, and he's like, well, I'll just have one, which is a big deal. And you would think, oh, this is going to taste amazing. It didn't to him. He was like, how could I ever drink this? So you really can change like your cravings, your brain, your palate, your tongue, literally. But it takes some work on the front end, and you got to start somewhere. So if you can change that initial cue, you're golden. If you can figure out a different way, maybe I had to eat dinner in a different chair, or eat different dinners, or you got to switch it around. But you got to do something, or you have to replace that habit with something else after dinner, or take a walk before dinner, and that might even just lower your cortisol a little bit, so then you're not craving after dinner. But you got to switch something up if it's behavioral. Number 2, if you are not eating enough for dinner, or what I see is throughout the day, and then you're like binging at night, you got to eat enough. I'm not going to talk about like calories too much here, but you want to make sure you get enough protein, 1 gram per ideal body weight a day, which will sound like a lot if you are not doing that. That'll sound like a lot. I get about 140 grams a day. That's about what you get too, don't you? 140. Amber, what happened for you when you ate? I don't remember what you were eating protein-wise before. It was decent, but like what happened when you went to a little more protein?
I just wasn't as hungry overall.
Sure.
I was doing really low carb and trying to go low calorie, but I did not replace any of it with protein. So I was just
Sure, hungry. Right, you're just not eating
time.
enough. Yeah,
And I stopped being hungry all the time.
yeah. And then it's more sustainable. So even if you can just, if you don't eat much protein at all, even if you could get to like 100, that's at least like a good start, I think, for, I would say most women, men a little bit more. But I routinely have women at 140, 150 grams of protein. I don't go a ton higher than 150, 160 because it's just hard to get, especially if you're like wanting to cut calories a little bit. You just be like eating chicken all day and that's ridiculous. But
I may have mentioned to you, might be remembering, I think I mentioned to you once. I was kind of an after dinner snacker. But
yeah.
For me, it was always salt and fat.
Yeah, yeah.
But when I eat enough protein at dinner, it keeps me full all the way till bedtime.
Right.
And
so then you don't feel like you need
no
it.
Craving.
Right.
The craving
Right.
was completely
Right.
gone.
Right.
I was full through that.
Right. So it's protein and fiber are the two that I would say. And so were you going to say something? So that's protein. That's like vegetables and a steak. Seriously. Like that's, you know, and a lot of it, like not a quarter cup of peas. Like I'm talking like a ton of vegetables and any ones you want, like whatever, doesn't matter. So
Would you repeat what you said, 1 gram
per ideal body weight.
Okay, and is
But
that
for women, I don't
ideal?
typically exceed 150 grams. So a day.
a day?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So even sometimes people are like, I don't want to add all of that. Then sometimes I'll start to have people try to get at least 30 grams a meal. So if you want to even start with that, that's a good place to start. That would include, like, ideally include snacks too, though. What you will find if you are eating full satiating meals with protein and fiber is that you really shouldn't need to snack. And in fact, my meal plans, I don't put snacks in there. People get mad sometimes, but there can be digestive implications to that, not for everybody, and there's definitely blood sugar implications. If you eat a whole bunch of carbs without the sugar and the fiber, it'll spike your insulin and then you'll kind of crave more.
But you're saying 30 grams of protein per meal?
At least, yeah. So like I do 4, I'm going to call them meals a day. One of mine is smaller and I get 35 times 4, so that's 140 for me. 35 grams of protein is really only like probably 5 ounces of like a chicken or a steak or something and a couple sides. So it's not ridiculous. I mean, if you go out and you get a filet, those are like 6. But that could be a burger. That could be the hamburger in your spaghetti. That could be ground turkey. You know what the hardest meal for people is with that? Guess. Breakfast. Because you grab a bagel or a waffle, and so you really have to kind of tweak what you're eating for breakfast. I'm going to talk about eggs for a second. Eggs are phenomenal unless you're sensitive to them. Eggs have protein, only less than you think though. So they're about half protein, half fat. I'm not saying don't eat eggs, but do you know how many eggs you have to get to hit 30 grams protein? 5. Who eats 5 eggs? Like that's a lot. I think some a chunk of guys can, but like I couldn't eat, and I'm actually sensitive to egg white, so I would feel awful if I did that. But 5 eggs is a lot. So eat eggs, but then you need to kind of pair it with something. Maybe it's I love the Siggy's Skyr yogurt here. It's a non-fat plain. 3/4 of a cup of that has 19 grams of protein. And in fact, that's the only dairy that I can tolerate, but I do really great with it. It's 99% lactose free, so it's easy to digest. I had that this morning. In fact, here's what I had for breakfast. So I haven't had lunch yet, but for breakfast this morning, I eat like later. It was like 11ish. I had 3/4 of a cup of that with the Ancient Nutrition, which we have here, bone broth protein. I had a caramel one. There's vanilla and chocolate too. I had only a half a scoop of that, which is like a tablespoon. I sprinkled that on the yogurt because it's a little bit sweet and it gives like a flavor. And I put can't remember if it's Kitchen. It's in the red bag. I put a 1/4 cup of roasted edamame soy nuts on top, like for a crunch. 37 grams of protein that is.
I think those are Sea Point Farms.
Sea Point Farms. See, I knew Amber would. This is why she's here. I'm like, the red bag. What is that? So something simple that, by the way, I didn't have to cook. And I was like racing between a couple things before I got here. And so I made it in about 2 minutes and I ate it in about 5. So.
And you're not hungry.
Scrap. No, I'm not yet. So the next time I eat will probably be maybe an hour or so from now. I'm going to the apple orchard today, which will probably have an apple and nothing else and spike my insulin a little bit, but whatever, it's an apple. But no, I'm not. But I'm not hungry when I wake up either because I've eaten a chunk throughout the day. So I tend to fast in the morning. I also have a digestive condition where I feel better if I just fast a little bit longer, like 16:8. So my first meal of the day is like 11 or 12. Um, I'm not up till 7:30, so it's like 4 hours, but I feel fine. I do like a collagen water in the morning, so but that doesn't really have any calories, but I do that, and then I do the cold brew, um, only 3 ounces, and that's yummy. And sometimes I have to remember to eat like by 12:30. Now I don't wait though till I'm like shaky blood sugar. That's not what I'm talking about. But once you are metabolically adapted and you're eating enough protein and fiber, you really can be then flexible, so you don't have to like eat at a certain time or you feel like you're going to crash. If you feel like you have to eat at a certain time or you have to, you like need food right now, that's poor blood sugar issues, and that's their insulin going like this, like up, down, up, down, up, down. We don't want that. We want kind of steady state. That's why I suggest too, like the carbohydrates that you put in your meals, put some in every meal, but like steady state, not like super maybe, if I'm going to do a lower carb meal, mine's dinner because I'm not doing much after that, so it's okay. But don't have a bagel and a waffle and maple syrup and a frappuccino from Starbucks all in one meal. That's hundreds of carbs. That's like enough for a whole day. And because you're going to crash and feel tired, and then what are you going to want? More of that, And so try to spread that out. But yeah, at least 30 grams is a good place for people to start. I always, every Saturday, get the tuna salad from Basics, and I do a wrapper salad with it, and I have vegetables on the side, so that'll be my lunch, and that's 30 some right there again. I usually do the Ancient Nutrition protein shake, or there's Ripple has some from Target, and I do something like that with like a beef stick. That's like my third meal. It's not really a meal, but it's calories wise, it's about 400 calories. So, and then I'll do a dinner, usually some kind of like fish broccoli and sweet potato or like something like that. That's 140 right there without a ton of effort, but like just it's tweaking what you're having. But yeah, the minute that you have more protein and fiber, you won't be. And I don't really crave sugar. If you put it in front of me, then I will think about it, and then my brain will be like, "You like that? You want some." But really, other than that, I really don't. Which is nice. It's nice to not have the stress of needing to have it or needing to eat. Right when I wake up. So if you don't eat enough, and if you don't have satiating meals, then that's a change that you can make. If you have the issue with the behavior and the cue, you might have an issue with all of these. If you have an issue with the cue, then you got to drive around the Diet Coke. Think about that. Drive around the Diet Coke. Don't get there. You got to do something different. You got to, take a walk. You got to start replacing that habit. Number 3, if you eat too fast, your brain hasn't even registered that the food went in there yet. So you just got to you want to keep eating. I'll have my husband watch this, but I'm going to tell you, he is done eating by the time I sit down and put my plate. He just like, I'm like, did you have enough food when you were growing up? Or like, and sometimes that can be a thing. I'm like, what? Like, what? He's just like, I don't know. It looks good. I'm like, well, thank you, number 1, but geez, like, and he has no digestive issues, of course. But if you eat too fast and you don't take time to savor your meal, I'm going to say at least 15 minutes, sit down, smell it, cook it, taste it, enjoy it, then, it just like, it's like still sitting right here, and then you still want more. So take your time. Try not to eat on I-94. Like while you're doing other things. We're all eating while we're doing other things or in a meeting or whatever. And I do it too, for sure. In between clients, it's usually my meal that's in the middle of the day, my lunch. I really have a hard time like fitting in. Sometimes it's 5 o'clock before I eat. And I would say, even you were saying, are you hungry? Like I eat my first meal at 11. If I don't eat till 5, now by 5, I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to eat. But I can easily go 6 hours then without feeling awful. But it's because that first meal of the day does matter. And I'm not going to say you have to eat breakfast, but eat something, and it doesn't have to be right away. But just eat when you're hungry, don't when you're not. And this is an overnight process, but you'd be surprised it doesn't take long to switch that over. I would say in a couple weeks, if you are upping and if you want to track one thing, don't even track your sugars, your fats, your nothing. Just track your protein. That alone will probably just make like a small enough change that you'll be good. But yeah, start with 30 grams in each meal. That'll, like, if you eat 3 meals a day, that's 90, that's something. But like, yeah, I have most women upwards towards 150. That's a little bit of a push. You really got to think about like what things you're going to do. I love those soy nuts. And there's another brand actually recently that I got on Amazon that has like their buffalo or ranch flavor. We just put them on our salads. So I'll make a side salad with a ton of vegetables and like a vinaigrette. I put a quarter cup of those soy nuts on there. I just added 10 grams of protein and a crunch. Way more protein than if I were to put like walnuts or pecans, which are yummy also. But again, I'm just always trying to get the protein. If we go out to eat, that's the first thing I look for on the menu is. So we went to Janisa. They have this, it's called a meatball trio. They have all these different homemade meatballs and they're huge, but you pick 3 meatballs. So I got that and a big salad. And it was, I mean, we were stuffed, but then I got dessert. So. But I thought if I get a pizza, I'm going to be so full. Like, it's just not going to be much protein. I'm going to be so full that I'm going to. What I really wanted to do was a lady next to me had this farmer's market vegetable pizza, and I really just wanted to ask her for a couple bites because I wanted to try it. But I didn't want to order the whole thing because they're huge, you know? Yeah, I would do better at a restaurant where they brought out a whole bunch of things and I could just try little bits of things like a small, not a small plate restaurant. So if you finish your meal in a couple minutes, you've just capped your own pleasure experience from eating. You didn't get any of that. You haven't even digested it. And so that's why you want more. So at least 15 minutes. Research actually says closer to 30. Most of us I know probably do not take 30 minutes to eat. My husband takes, 12 seconds, but really like, if you are, part of the food experience is smelling. That's why I had you smell the chocolate and tasting and really just, working with that. And so if you are inhaling your food, you skip all of that. And so there's biological processes that go along with that. So pace yourself. Plus, you're gonna have a hard time digesting that if you eat super fast. So if you have IBS or anti-digestion issues, meals, not snacks, and don't eat so fast. Like those are just 2 small things I could tell you without even changing anything that you are eating, but just the way that you're eating. All right, last one. You're eating too many carbs at dinner. So that's just typical. That's the pasta spaghetti example. And so you're eating quick absorbing carbs. Pasta has no fiber. It's going right through you. Cereal is another big one in the morning. People eat a big bowl of cereal and you're never eating 1 serving of cereal. It's like 4 because nobody eats like 3/4 of a cup of cereal. And so if you have a big bowl of cereal, run in. If you have a big bowl of cereal, an hour later, you're like, I'm hungry. Well, why? Yeah, because there's nothing in that. So there's not a lot of fiber, not a lot of absorption. And so again, adding protein. I don't find that people need to on purpose add fat to meals. I think if you are eating a lot of the proteins and a lot of the foods that we just, and you're putting like olive oil on something or a pat of butter on your potato, I feel like that a lot of times adds extra calories we don't need. I am not anti-fat at all. I'm saying in the course of eating, if you're eating enough protein and well-balanced meals, most of us get enough fat. Most of us do, unless you're trying to do some crazy diet or you're only eating 1,200 calories or something like that. But, so I generally like to say add protein. I don't even tell people to cut carbs because if you add protein, you're just not going to you won't be able to fit anything else in there. Like you really are going to be more full. So like protein and fiber. So if you think of your plate as like a circle, half of it vegetables, and it could be 2 different ones. So it could be like a steamed vegetable and like a salad. Maybe 30% is like I'm going to say 5 ounces of protein, somewhere in there, 6. If you're only doing 3 meals a day, then maybe 6-7 ounces of protein. If you're doing 3 meals and a snack or 4 meals a day, it could be more like 4 or 5. And then your other 20% is like your potato or your Doritos, for gosh sake, really, because if you can hit that 80%, it'll be pretty, balanced. Quinoa is one of my favorite sides, has a ton of fiber, and 6 grams of protein in 1 serving. And if you make the quinoa, it's actually technically a seed, not a grain. We have it here. I really like just the plain like beige colored one. I forget the actual cool name for it. If you make your quinoa in like a bone broth, you are adding about 10 grams of protein to that too. So all of a sudden your quinoa now has that sort of grain side that you would have instead of pasta, now has 16 grams of protein without a lot of effort. And it tastes yummy because you've made it in chicken stock. So if you add that and some chicken and then whatever vegetables, I'm not even picky with vegetables, you guys. Like I try to get people to like different things, but don't worry about it. Try frozen vegetables, fine too. Not canned, that's not my favorite. They're pretty processed, but like I really like frozen or fresh vegetables of any kind, green. So don't go crazy on how much vegetables and measuring all that. Just get some protein and go from there. So, all right, questions.